Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is Me, and today I will be reading Chapter 128 of Engagement in Peril by Dara, Odoe, Suck. Chapter 128 is titled Shinshin Loses Detective Hampton. For the next several years, Shinshin was cared for and looked after by the state of California and by the loving heart of Detective Hampton at the San Pedro Police Department. Shinshin was now about 11 years old. He had grown well, healthy, and taller. He was fit for his age and well nourished, and he had been happy with his situation thus far. He had accepted his place in life and had come to adore all those around him. He adored and cherished his fellow orphans, and he loved the good detective that often visited him. He had learned much from this humble person who had taken the responsibility of watching over him and provided him with some peace of mind and teaching him the basics of importance of being a reliable human being. Shinshin was practically raised by Detective Hampton, and Shinshin saw him and admired him for what he had done for him. Every year from then on, Detective Hampton mentored and involved Shinshin and several other orphans in local sports teams and leagues. Shinshin had it all for being an orphan. Besides attending public school with his fellow orphans, he participated in baseball, basketball, and soccer camp throughout the summer, always encouraged by the good detective to learn as much as he can and to be able to do his best at what he did. Shinshin was often reminded by the good detective that his intelligence would carry him far and beyond his imaginations. With Detective Hampton's care and introduction, the whole police precinct know of Shinshin and his massive brain. He often indulged in various chess games among the squad room and always beat his competitor, no matter what age or how great they thought they were. During an outing with Detective Hampton around and about the city of San Pedro, Shinshin rode shotgun in the detective's cruiser while monitoring calls and messages sent and received. A 211 armed bank robbery in progress at the National Bank of San Pedro was aired over the police intercom. That shots had been fired and a policeman on the scene was taking heavy fire from the robbers. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" the dispatcher read on. All units were dispatched and requested to tend to the shootout bank robbery in progress at one of the local national banks. Knowing damn well that he shouldn't be bringing Shinshin with him to this sort of shootouts, Detective Hampton was convinced and pleaded by Shinshin to bring him along nonetheless. With sincerity and pleading, "I just want to see how you work and promise that I'll stay out of everyone's way." This Shinshin excitedly promised the good lawman of how he would behave. Hampton knew that Shinshin's words were true and sincere, and he wanted Shinshin to experience what police officers actually do for a living on a daily basis. So with few hesitations, he agreed with Shinshin and zoomed his police cruiser off toward the bank robbery shootout in progress several miles down the road from what he had just heard, from where he had just been. With their seatbelts buckled and the police car siren blaring its way toward the dreadful excitement, Detective Hampton drove fast and meticulously around stopped and parked cars. He maneuvered his fast vehicle through congested street over pedestrian-free sidewalk while monitoring for oncoming cars and traffic as he ran several red lights intersections in the process. After several quick minutes on the concrete road, the good detective halted his vehicle sharply and arrived to the scene. He quickly threw on his flak jacket, took Shinshin out of his vehicle, and escorted him toward the coffee shop across the street from the bank, where a group of police and detectives were using it as their base of command. He had Shinshin sit at the counter area next to the shop employee while he went about to gather and listen on the information strategy plans that the senior cops had already begun to talk about. With their guns, pistol, and shotgun in hand, each cop and detective and their assigned tasks and locations. Detective Hampton and Sergeant Meeks were placed in charge of negotiation with the assailant inside of the bank. Therefore, they were about to walk into the line of fire. Before leaving the confined space of the coffee shop, Detective Hampton looked back to the counter area, making sure that Shinshin was safe and sound. He gave Shinshin a wink and a slight smirk while raising his right hand over his right brow in a gesture of gratitude. And off he went. And he was off on his way to talk to the bank robbers. He left the safety zone with the sergeant on his side. Once outside in the middle of the blocks off streets and with a megaphone in hand, the police sergeant spoke. This is Sergeant Meeks of the San Pedro Police Department. We are here to negotiate the release of those hostages held in the bank. Is anyone hurt in there? And what are your demands?" were the decorated sergeant's last words. All of a sudden, a shot was fired from within the confined space of the bank. A precise, direct shot to the head of Sergeant Meeks. He dropped dead against the gripping arm of Detective Hampton. Shinshin looked on from the clear, elongated window off the coffee shop. In shock, he saw the good sergeant go down. He ran forward to see what of his beloved Detective Hampton. As soon as he ran toward the front entrance, he was gulped up by the large arm of a policeman. "Son, you can't go out there," the caring cop instructed this of Shinshin. I want to see what happened to my friend. To my friend Detective Hampton," Shinshin worried replied. From the sudden sharp shot, Detective Hampton abruptly ducked down and dragged his dead sergeant body toward a parked GMC pickup truck nearby. Over the police receiver, once again it was announced. Shots fired! Shots fired! Police officer down! Police officer down! Someone had frantically spoken through. From the scared voice of the announcer, the multiple cops and detectives hidden outside returned and unloaded their weapons toward the direction of the bank and where the single fire shot came from. Sounds of gunfire drowned out the whole atmosphere for the moment. No one heard the command and requested ceasefire for a few more seconds until almost everyone had emptied their gun's chamber of stored bullets. Some even had already reloaded their guns. Once the command to cease fire was heard, the sound of the voice began to emerge over the sound of the bullet being fired. Pinned down from above by the shooter from the bank, Detective Hampton leaning against the older model pickup truck while still holding onto his dead sergeant's corpse. With his freed hand holding and gripping onto his Smith & Wesson's Colt 44 millimeter, he adjusted himself well from the side of the shooter. He looked around and about to see what his fellow policemen were. He was seeing if he could get out of his predicament then, that he got himself into. Alongside the window's edge, Shinshin looked out into the street, his eye frantically searching for his beloved detective. After a few worried seconds, he finally found the good lawman. He saw that Detective Hampton was pinned against the pickup truck. Having learned about religion from the orphanage, Shinshin did his best to pray to God for assistance then. "Dear Lord, it's me, Shinshin Nagami. My friend is alone out there and he needs your help. Please help him," this Shinshin simply requested of God. I don't think God heard Shinshin that day. Maybe he was too busy to help an orphan bastard boy. Maybe he was too busy to help an orphan bastard boy that he had already taken so much from. Maybe God was too busy tending to his flock of devoted daily worshippers, whatnot. Once again, God just wasn't there for poor, misguided Shinshin then. God had already taken Shinshin's young mother during his birth and smashed the shit and life of his beloved, cherished parents, the Taylors, several years earlier. And what else could God do? What couldn't God do? After his prayers and hope for his beloved Detective Hampton, Shinshin witnessed and experienced firsthand the slaying of the good detective, his third tragic loss in his young life. Where the hell was God in all of this? I ask you. Where the hell was God in all of this? While Detective Hampton looked around, he saw a slight opening back to the safety of the coffee shop that was a few hundred feet away. He knew that he had brought Shinshin and put him in danger and fear from all of his fiasco, and in his giving heart, he wanted no more fear and shame for Shinshin to experience. He wanted to shout the loneliness of loss for Shinshin, and he knew what he must do to keep Shinshin's fear, nightmares, and frustration away. With a few deep breaths, the detective got on his feet with his knees still bent and his back still leaning against the side of the pickup truck. A few more deep breaths, he closed his eye and began to dash for the comfort of the coffee shop. His fast pace and feet pounding against the hard concrete street, his breathing heavy and in agonizing fear, he ran for his dear life. He ran for Shinshin's life. He ran and ran in zigzag pattern. Left, right, left, right, left, right. He zoomed through the first 100 feet, yet no shot was fired at him. With some aching pain, his cab tightened and slowed down his once quick pace just a few seconds ago. There was the sound of a rifle handling being pulled back. A 16mm bullet was loaded into the rifle and thrust back into its place. The rifle's chamber was loaded. The sight was focused on Detective Hampton's head, and the kill shot was fired. Only a few feet away from the sudden ajar coffee shop door, While other cops were urging him onward into the confined place, Detective Hampton's body went down with a heavy thud. A, a side of his face had been blown straight off his skull and away from his fallen body, in front of Shinshin's very eye. The collapsed friend lay dead. The deceased only eye, which was still attached to the whole body, was focused on where Shinshin stood frozen in shock from his loss. In tearful and agonizing cry, Shinshin once again screamed at the top of his lung over a loved one's passing. No! 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 In disbelief, Shinshin tried to make sense of it. Pulling him away from the exposed window, a cop warmly embraced the mournful young lad that he once again lost a good, beloved friend and mentor. Shots fired! Shots fired! Man down! Man down! Once again the frantic announcer promoted. Almost an exact blue copy of the previous announcement. All shots rang out once again, and at this time everyone with a gun or two unloaded and reloaded and unloaded their weapon into the vicinity of the bank and the shooter. Windows, bricks, and concrete walls were filled with bullets of every type. Guns barrels were steaming red hot and filled with smoke from the sudden constant use and spraying of bullets out of their chamber. After a few long minutes of shooting wherever, the person in charge asked for a ceasefire and waited while planning the next step to end this tragic disturbance. The active crime scene is now all silent. Only radio frequencies were used. Few words were exchanged among cops and detectives. All were scared and anxious to see what would happen next. After a few more minutes of waiting, the National Bank front door were opened, and a white sheet was being waved to alert the angry, scared, temperamental cop of surrender. A voice from within the bank was heard. "We give up! We are done! We have no more bullets and out of ammunition! We surrender!" The low-pitched, manly voice yelled from afar. Still suspicious of the surrender, the next person in charge of the scene spoke over the megaphone and demanded the culprit and his team to come out of the bank backward and with their hands locked above their heads. One by one, 6 hooded, heavy armored, suited culprits exited the bank backward and with their hands locked above their head. One by one, each was taken into custody and handcuffed by nearby police officers. After a few quick questions answered of the newly captured assailants, the police had learned that there were few bank customers in the bank when it was taken over, and most of the bank employees had already been shot and killed by them. And they also learned that there were 13 other culprits in the bank that day during the bank heist. They mentioned that their friends and confidants had been or may have been shot and killed from the rapid unloading by force by the San Pedro Police Department then. While in handcuffs, and each captured robber was unmasked and searched for any other weapons and identification that they may have on their persons. Slowly and meticulously, the San Pedro PD SWAT team was sent in. They maneuvered around the bank, checking for pulse and making sure that the masked robber were dead like they were informed by the captured outsides. They went around checking on the deceased bank patrons and employees too. Several lay dead as though they were running for the exit before being shot and killed from behind. The bank manager and one of his bank staff was shot point blank dead in the bank's vault, where cash and bloodstains were dispensed all over the place. A few were still breathing and still had some small signs of life in them. The SWAT team made sure to secure the entire bank first before allowing the ready awaiting medic team to enter and treat the wounded inside the bank. One by one, the dead culprits were counted and accounted for. 1 hooded man dead, 2 hooded men dead, 3 hooded men not dead, only wounded. He was quickly put in handcuffs. 3 hooded men dead, 4 hooded men dead, 5 hooded men dead. After their count, there were only 6 hooded men found on the bank's floor. The culprit outside had said there were 13 of them. So far, they had only tallied a total of 12 gunmen. Where's the missing hooded man? The SWAT team asked this of each other. All at once they remembered that one of the culprits had the high ground, where he had shot the policeman sergeant and Detective Hampton a few minutes back, while everyone witnessed the execution-style murderous killings then. Slowly and bunched up in a diamond formation, the SWAT team of 4 men made their way up and around the wrapping marble staircase toward the upper level of the bank. Slowly they searched about the upstairs. Several dead employees were spotted and checked on. A customer or two were laid dead too near the customer. A customer or two were laid dead too near the customer representative desk. Door to door they checked for everyone hiding or dead in the several offices upstairs. Last place the SWAT team checked was the small janitor's storage closet, which faced the coffee shop from across the street. Slowly they squeezed and tried to turn the locked doorknob. They announced themselves before kicking in the small wooden door. "San Pedro Police, open the door or we'll be coming in," one of the officers had commanded. They waited a few seconds. Once no one reply was heard and their demand not followed, they signaled each other of their forced entrance into the janitor's closet. Counting 1, 2, and 3, one large officer kicked open the locked wooden door. From the view of the room, the closet window and wall had been shattered from all the bullets inside. Only the small diamond-shaped chicken wire screen mesh withstood the heavy firing. With their semi-automatic drawn against their shoulders and their sight at their eyes, and the sights at their eyes, they proceeded to enter the small storage space. Slowly they paced behind one another, watching out for each other's back and looking for anything out of the ordinary. After about 10 paces, they came to and halt and saw the prone dead body of their 13th masked culprit. Still clutched tightly in the dead masked man's hand was his military-style sniper rifle. Still with his trigger finger holding back the trigger latch, with his grip on the rifle was firm. The sniper had been shot several times in the face and head area. His entire head and shoulder region was pretty much mushed from all those spray bullets into the storage space. Sad story was that the sniper was able to take out 2 good cops before meeting the inevitable himself. With some relief, the SWAT team leader relayed the findings of the 13th culprit, stated that the entire bank's facility was all clear and secure, and medical personnel were allowed and sent into the bank to triage and treat the injured and wounded. After all bodies, dead and living bodies, were removed from the bank, it was closed and yellow taped off for further investigation by the San Pedro Police Department CSI unit. Once again, Shinshin had lost a loved one. What could he do? What was to become of him? This was questions of God's intention. This was questions of God's intention for poor Shinshin. Cops who knew of Shinshin and Detective Hampton's relation was quite sorry for the poor kid's mishap, and some knew of Shinshin's misfortune so far, and their sympathy was enormous and heartfelt. Still in some tears, but his cries have lessened. He has learned to control some of his emotion and has learned to accept the inevitable thrown at him. One of Detective Hampton's fellow officer drove Shinshin back to the orphanage later that afternoon. After some information was gathered from the young boy about the whereabouts of Detective Hampton before arriving to the bank robbery scene, and why Shinshin was with him in the first place, they were careful and mindful not to push Shinshin's button. They were not playing any role of good cop, bad cop then with Shinshin, for they knew he too was a victim in all this. They gave him some lunch while being questioned and statement written down from him at the police precinct. Shinshin's statement and explanation to the officer who was taking his statement regarding today's incident was so vivid and in such articulate detail that he was able to visualize and saw everything that Shinshin was describing as if he was there himself, involved in all that fiasco earlier. Once he had gathered what he needed from Shinshin, he was once again driven home in a police squad car by one of the local San Pedro Police Department officer. At the orphanage, somber atmosphere was all around. The orphanage staff and crew knew of Detective Hampton's death and how painful it must be for Shinshin. Later that week, a memorial ceremony and parade were viewed by thousands of television viewers and street gatherers at the San Pedro Police Department, ushered around the 7 slain police officers in dark motorcade limousine. While traditional bagpipes were played during the long drive, in front of the motorcade, in a separate casket, lay the dead body of Sergeant Meeks and Detective Hampton, followed by the other 5 fallen officers. Each limousine was marked with their names, and the pictures were attached to their sides. The 7-mile motorcade drive was slow and precise. Streets were blocked off, and vendors closed their shop for the day in respect of the lost one. Shinshin was there too. He had been invited by the San Pedro Police Department. He was in the inn and with the police chief limousine following slowly behind the deceased motorcade. In a nicely pressed, used black suit that the orphan managed to scrunch up for Shinshin, he walked behind the casket while San Pedro officer, decked out in their full uniform outfit and white glove, carried their slain fellow officer to their burial plots. After all 7 caskets were set atop their site, the burial ritual began, and one by one, with bagpipes, music playing, family and friends placed and dropped white lilies atop the lower casket. Shinshin did this for each casket. Shinshin did this for each casket as well. He dropped a lily for each one. He took longer at Detective Hampton casket. He had already missed his friend so much and wished things were different. He somehow blamed himself for the good detective's death. If he hadn't begged and pleaded with him to take him to the bank heist, maybe none of this would have happened to his beloved detective, as he cried over while they lowering the casket. After a good few rounds of gunfire into the air were sounded, people began to leave the cemetery as long as the burial ceremony began and lasted. Shinshin was quickly taken back to the only home he'd known for more than half of his life now. He was once again returned to the orphanage at the children's ranch. Thank you for listening. This is the end of chapter 128. Be on the lookout for chapter 129, titled Shinshin's Demonic Outlets. This is Do, Ra, me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.